right, welcome everybody to Real Talk with Casey and JoJo. What's up, Casey?
What up, JoJo?
Hello, what's up?
So we are huge fans, okay? Huge fans. You're the author of this amazing book, The God Design, right? Elevation, we have that one too. Amazing, amazing book. And then she's read, but I've started your newest book, The Cell of Life, right? And I want to tell you thank you because like I know our journey and I'm so excited to hear about your journey and kind of the path that you followed that led you exactly where you are in this moment. But kind of getting into it, like where did this journey of spiritual awakening begin for you? When did that happen? And just kind of freestyle it and just let it flow.
But first of all, everybody, Kelly-Marie Kerr.
Kerr. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to see you. Wow, yeah, I mean, it's been a long, cool path for me. I was kind of first introduced to God as a child. I was in religious schools and my parents were fairly strict Christians. So, you know, Christmas was always about the Jesus story and Easter was always about, you know, the cross and hot cross buns and all of these things. And I always felt like, why on earth? How could any person send their child to be sacrificed, even if it was for all of mankind? I just never fully could accept that as a literal story, even as a child. But I don't think you know as a child like what your questions really mean. You're just very clear on you believe some stuff and you don't really believe other things. And then as I got older, I got more and more into yoga because of my acting and dance training. It's always like yoga's used as a way to release the ego for acting and go deeper into method acting practices where you're taking on a character more seriously, and obviously in dance for just, you know, flexibility and core strength and all of those different things. And in my church life, a lot of my Christian friends couldn't accept that I loved yoga and that, you know, I was so deeply into it. They saw it as something that was sinful, something that could potentially lead me off of the Christian path. And the church that I was in at the time they had a very strong kind of mantra, if you like, that they would push on people about not needing any other texts apart from the King James Bible. So if you even mentioned, you know, reading a yoga book by whoever, it was almost like, oh, you know, what are you doing? You're opening the doors to other forces. Yeah. The only way, you know, to heaven is through Jesus and all of these things. And I mean, I knew from doing so much yoga how great it made me feel and how clear my mind would feel at times and how I'd really just feel like the love bubbling up. And it was really from them trying to put me off yoga that made me go really hard into finding a way to show that actually yoga is okay. So I just did more and more research into the background of yoga and where did it really come from. And there was a couple of Christian yoga teachers, one Rhonda Jones, who is incredible. She's from the States. I was doing one of her methods at the time, and I think she was the first person who I came across the Essenes through. And when I heard about the Essenes, I got really excited the immovable light race, that practiced yoga and vegan eating and all of these things. And it was around a similar time that my church was doing February fast, where every February we would all like fast from something, whether it was social media or technology or some kind of sugar or caffeine. And because of the yoga and the Essene influence, I decided to do a full fast and go all the way, like Daniel in the Lion's Den vibes. And it was when I did that I started to connect so many parallels between yoga and the Bible, the book of Revelation specifically. And around when I was fasting, like I've always had very vivid dreams, and I've always had like certain messages coming through or promptings that I would kind of understand as being, you know, the Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call it. But back then, that's what I used to refer to it as, you know, I've had a prompting from Spirit. This is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. And I started having dreams. I started hearing the word seek vision, and I was like, seek vision? What on earth does that mean? Like, I think I'm seeking. I don't really think I'm doing much else other than seeking, to be honest. And then the passage, Matthew 6:33, kept coming through all the time. It was everywhere I looked, those numbers as well. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And I felt intrigued, like, well, what else will be added, as an actress and someone who was writing for the industry, pitching sitcoms and so forth. I felt like that was my journey. I felt like I would somehow break it in the TV and film world and would use my voice to tell some kind of stories that would be helpful for people that were, I don't know, seeking God, I guess. But it turned out that wasn't what I was supposed to do at all. So then through just lots and lots of dreams and synchronicities and different things, I just carried on with the Essene yoga. And then one night which I now know was when the moon was in Taurus, which I had no idea of at the time, I went up to bed and I was just not really in a deep mood or a contemplative space at all. I was just kind of going about my daily routine, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and then out of nowhere I just felt like what felt like electric going through my body upwards, like an oil, or just, I actually get goosebumps when I talk about it because it was so incredible. It was scary in a sense of I didn't know what was happening, but it was amazing in a sense of I knew it was good and I didn't want it to stop. My husband is not a Christian. He's not particularly spiritual, like, at all. So I didn't mention it straight away to anyone. All I kept thinking was, oh my gosh, what's just happened? What was this? Wow. I immediately started writing stuff in my journal. And as I started writing, I started having more and more clear visions just flashing up, like a blank YouTube channel and a website that had the 4 creatures from Ezekiel very clearly there, and just lots of different things. And it was almost like just a download of holograms, if you like. And I wrote down as much as I could remember, and until it basically like stopped and I just passed out and fell asleep. And then the next day I just felt like, oh wow, all I could think about was what happened. How do I share this? This is incredible. What on earth like is going on with me? But also, who do I speak to? Because
Right.
the church already think that I'm, dabbling in whatever. And my husband's so mainstream, it's like not so much anymore. Like we're years down the line and we've come like a long way and it's really cool. But then like, wow, really didn't want him to think I completely lost my mind. So I just started, one of the things that I saw at the time was blue oil going upwards against gravity. And another time when I was just coming around from being asleep, like a few months later, I saw the oil again and it was like going up my walls towards the ceiling. And I was like, what on earth is this blue stuff that's just like rising? It's really cool. And I was looking at all the different etymologies for the word blue, all the different languages for the word blue, trying to relate them back to the Bible, trying to think of all the different words that are used for oil over the years. Like, where is this blue oil? How does it relate to Jesus? Because of my upbringing and everything that I knew at the time, all I could think about was this was, biblical. Yeah. So I kind of got a bit disheartened because I couldn't really find any answers, if I'm completely honest. And then one day I was just looking at emails and I saw like, oh, your recommended YouTube videos, and it was John St. Julian and Jim Carrey talking about the anointing of Christ or something like this. And I put it on and there's John and he's like, oh, you got to watch this clip by Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey's like, oh, and there's 33 vertebrae in the spine and there's like the Kundalini rising. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is
the oil that's rising.
Me.
Like, this is it. Oh, wow. And I'd already had some pieces like with the revelation symbolism that was coming through with the chakras lining up with the churches and this sort of thing. I knew that there was some like inner stuff happening in the Bible, but it was that final piece for me that made everything really finally like clear, if you know what I mean. It was like it had all been building, and it was all fabulous, and I knew something really amazing had happened and I felt great. But it wasn't until I had that final puzzle piece that I was like, oh, yay, I know what this is now. And then
you're like bridging the gaps between all the things that were separate, and you're like, no, it's connected.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear your story, because I was telling Joanna, like, everyone that we've talked to about their story, it's been sort of different, not really similar to ours. And I feel like your story resonates with me and us deeply, because that's kind of what happened to us as well. She grew up Catholic. I was Protestant, specifically Pentecostal holiness, which is very kind of out there in my opinion. No disrespect, but we grew up in that environment, but it never made sense, right? Like you could never answer a question, because the question always either was ignored or just, don't worry about that, right? And then, as I'm reading your books, Elevation and tying it back to the Bible, with Revelation, amazing. But as I'm reading it, it's like, this makes sense. Like, my soul doesn't refute this, right? Like every question that I have so far in my journey, I've been able to find an answer, right? And you've been such an integral part of that, just the way you present the information, because I'm a science guy. I like to know the science, and I love the way, I'm only on the second chapter of The Cell of Life, but you're talking about water. So like, how old were you in Revelation to when kind of you had the Kundalini experience? How many years was it before the manifestation of your first book? Like, what was the timeline on that?
Not long. I mean, that Kundalini awakening that I had literally changed my world. Like,
I can imagine. Yeah.
my ability to maintain or remember information from one day to the next day, literally, it's insane. Like, I wouldn't have been able to write the God Design before this awakening happened. Like, I mean, I guess I would have been able to, but it would have just been such an arduous process. I don't know. I think it was only about 18 months altogether.
Wow.
And so many of the pieces just turned up as I needed them. I mean, because a lot of the time I didn't even really know where to look specifically. So it was just always such serendipity or synchronicity that was just helping me along the journey. And I found that, especially with books and piecing information together, I was just suddenly able to recall things from like where they were on a page that I'd read like a few months ago, and I definitely couldn't do that before. It's funny because a friend that I have now advises against like talking about your awakening too much, because you know, you can allow the kind of ego to get too involved.
For sure. Yeah, I can see that.
So I don't, you know, try not to, I guess, you know, take the route of being like, oh yeah, you know, you've got to do this because
for
it's
sure.
going to give you superhuman powers. But for me, I genuinely, like, my abilities like improved across the board. So I mean, intellectually, I just wasn't an intellectual person in that way. Like,
right.
The stuff that I was writing before the God Design was all fiction, although it's weird because some of the things that I wrote about with a writing partner years ago have kind of come true. So I don't know if that's just we manifested them into being, or whether we were kind of downloading the future without realizing it.
Very nice.
But then time is not linear, so it could be either of those things or both.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing because it's almost like you opened up, your brain opened up, right? Like you opened up another area of your brain, you upgraded your computer software, if you will. And you know, it's just kind of talking through it. Where do we leave off? Do you remember?
I am so sorry. I cannot even speak.
It's okay.
No,
no worries.
I'm choking.
Are you okay?
Some cold water.
Like, I can't even.
Have you got some honey?
No, but it's so cool because, you know, like I don't think I've had, I think I would know if I had a Kundalini experience. But you know, it's like I in my own personal life, there's so much baggage and so many levels of the ego that, you know, that I'm learning from and getting through and you know, whatever. But the end all be all is that, you know, what I think you deliver is that people like me that are looking, that I understand this information. I don't resonate with the church necessarily. And I do resonate, you know, with, like, St. Clair was a part of he was a part of Joanna's journey and I's journey as well. You know, we kind of went through bouncing around information, and it wasn't a direct download for us in the way it happened to you, but there was a thirst that couldn't be quenched for information to learn, you know, and it's like some of the, it's beautiful because some, like you're a fresh face, you know, like some of the older gentlemen, like Bill Donahue as an example. You know, it's, if you're judgmental and your ego, it's very hard to kind of get past that because of how old his videos are. And you understand what I'm saying? And so when, you know, there's judgment that can happen from people that maybe aren't as thirsty as you know, the awakening people of the world are. But, you know, as we get these new faces and we get these new perspectives and these profound, explanations that just resonate so deeply for people that are on that path. And that's kind of, I think, where Joanna and I are.
Just mix it together.
Right. Joanna and I are. But it's like, you're sharing your story, for me, just further ingrains that the knowledge that we seek, it's true. It's attainable, right? Everybody's story on how they get there is different, and you should have no expectations, right, of how to get there. It's just simply, walk the walk, seek vision, and you will find it. And, that's what's been such an inspiration, with your books and sharing this knowledge, because it's just, it resonates so deeply, and it's so hard to deny the truth in it, and just the Bible, and how it's it's an allegory for and a metaphor for your body, and as above, so below, right? And yeah, so thank you, because it just resonates so deep, and I know it's almost like you were chosen, and the fact that you've been able to follow that, respect, because we know how hard it is just with the things that we do, to walk the walk and talk the talk, and to be true, and not, like you said, let the ego get involved, right?
Yeah, the ego is a wild thing, for
For
sure.
sure.
And I think like none of us are perfect, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I think we all have moments where the ego wants us to fight for something that's actually not important at all. And then sometimes we can step back from that and recognize it. And other times we might get further down the path and then realize, like, oops. But I have a very hardcore, like, to the book Christian friend still. She's one of my long standing fixtures in my life. I love her, and we still have mad debates. She's still questions everything that I do, but she always says new levels, new devils. And I think, like,
that's interesting.
It's true, because you think you've got to a certain stage, and a lot of truth, and it really resonates with you, and you're so ready to embody that and take it out, and just not even deliberately share, but just be in your truth, and that will be enough. But then in certain moments when it's really triggering or difficult, like, it's new levels. It's like, okay, how do I now, this person is challenging me, or or whatever the situation is, to remain rooted in who I am. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know that I am, and what I represent. Can be a real challenge to just.
And that's why we have all those ups and downs, and you go up, you fall back, that's the whole part where she said we're not perfect.
Right.
Yeah. And it's hard, because most people, there's expectations of, well, if you're on this journey and you're on this path, maybe you shouldn't ever fall, but sometimes we fall,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, with the books, like Elevation in particular, like, really took hold when I was about 2/3 of the way through. Lockdown hit, and all I could think about was how lockdown was going to affect the finishing of that book. But what I now know is that I had to slow down, because some of the information that actually needed to come in, and some of the realizations that I had to have in order for it to be the complete piece that it is, weren't going to come until later down the line, until I had more context coming in different areas. And I did a Shakti dance qualification during one of the lockdowns, and my instructor, when she was talking about the Shakti fire and her perspectives, and a couple of texts that she led me to, actually became the real, like, grounding pieces that helped me to pushed that book to the finish line and helped me to feel really like happy with, okay, you know, is this what it's meant to be? Is this is where it's come to? I feel good about this now, because before I was a little bit like, you know, not 100% confident in what was being put across, and I still felt like it could be challenged on many levels. So I think our ego, or my ego, likes to, it's that old man time thing of, you got to get this done now, like what's taking you so long, go go go. And actually that's such a pile of rubbish. Like the more we're in the flow, and the more we relax into spirit and divine support, the more like everything just comes, and it will be what it's supposed to be. You know, like there are things in the Cell of Life that I wished I had when the God design was released, like the seed that's born in the solar plexus. I understood that, but I didn't have a way of articulating it until I started penning the Cell of Life. So it's just, you know, you've got to be open, or for me.
But it's like funny, because that's exactly kind of, I was just telling him before we got on here, I said, you know, it's so cool because it's you're saying it in a different way, but it's like we've been following you, so we're like, to us it's like, oh, there's more. Oh, look, the spleen. Oh, look, it's like a you know, you can't always, there's never anything like the number one, right? The number two is, oh, okay, it was okay. And then you the three is like, whoa, there's a huge surprise that makes it just as good as the first time. So to us, as you know, the viewers and the people on this side, it was a good revelation, you know, for us too, you know.
I was really excited, I have to say, like when I was like, oh, there it is, the little manger sitting there in the spleen. I was like, yay. Yeah, it was a good moment. But you know, for some reason, obviously I wasn't supposed to find it until much later on my own path. So and I think it's, you know, stem cell research is very controversial. And there's a lot of people, a lot of doctors that try and talk about it and try and talk about the power of stem cell therapy, and often silenced. So maybe that's why maybe now, like as the world's progressed, we're in more of a place to accept and be allowed to speak about these things. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. And I if I may, because I like to quantify things, I'm a numbers guy, right? And I'm just curious, like the Cell of Life, to put this book into a book, and I know a little bit of something about that working with Joanna in terms of just the process. But how many hours and books did it take for you to get that into this, if that makes sense?
I mean, that particular book, Cell of Life, is the culmination of all of it.
Right. Yeah.
And with this one, because Elevation is a big book, there's a lot to digest. I wanted to make the Cell of Life really digestible and really just accessible to somebody who's maybe never even been introduced to the topic before, but have enough kind of like references drawn back to the Bible, for example, to quantify it against other things. So I mean, yeah, that the Cell of Life, it's years. I mean, I have a room that is literally just full of books and PDF downloads that I've printed off, like literally full. And it's like a running joke in my family that I'm Belle from Beauty because of this room full of books.
Nice. And that kind of like, I guess, just hammers it home for me, because the other thing that I really loved about, and this is turning into a discussion about the Cell of Life, but it's okay because it's amazing. You know, it's like you know, again, coming from a science background, one of the things that irritates me the most is what's your source, right? What's your source? Notate it. Is there a peer review study? Blah, blah, blah. And you provide almost, you know, just line, like section by section, you provide essentially a snapshot of where that came from, right? Which I love, because I'm not one to take, you know, okay, cool, I understand what you're saying, but if I see it from another person's perspective, it's like it just the roots become deeper, right? And I guess my question is like, was that intentional? Is that kind of like, was that your thought process in terms of, you know, the regular
100%.
people?
Yeah, 100%. Partly because I'm the same as you. Like, you know, since this journey began, I've come to love, for example, Bill Donahue, amazing teacher. Like, thank you so much. Like one of the great pioneers of this, you know, kind of
Yes.
100%, yeah.
exploration. But when I watch him or when I read his website, I'm always left wanting more. Like, what's the reference? What's the citation? And I'd love there to be a video explaining about how he has these revelations, or what are his sources for connecting the dots that he connected. Because I think, I mean, I hope he never watches this, but he's either part of like some kind of brotherhood where there's some kind of like texts that are not available in the mainstream. So he was able to just do this a lot sooner, or I don't know, or maybe he was just so well connected that to source through meditation and all of, you know, the spiritual practices, that it was all like very organic downloads, which is definitely possible. But I'm sure he must have had to quantify what he was receiving, if it was all spiritual, through other works, right?
Well, and he also, from just me watching him, God, I don't know how many years for how many hours, but like my files are going. You know, he used to preach, he used to know exactly, you know, the word, he used to do all that stuff. Up until he said he had an experience because he was, you know, meditating.
Okay, I'd love to see him say that. I've never heard that part of his.
Yeah, and he used to question things a lot, also, and he just really never understood why he would, why, basically because of his upbringing, seeing it was very brutal in the way his father was, and violence and all of that. He didn't understand, well, how is that a loving God? And so that kind of got him into seeking more. And you know, it's always those that really go through pain that really seek, and then they start to find. And he started seeing, you know, the connections. And I think a lot of us start to see the connections and then link. That's why it was so funny, because you said John St. Julian. I'm like, that's how I started. And then from John St. Julian, I was Bill Donahue. And then from there it was, you know, and it's, you kind of start getting those puzzle pieces that go together, because, you know, you just pick up what resonates, and then your background kind of puts together those pieces so that you have a big portion of the puzzle. We have a different big portion of the puzzle. We all kind of continue kind of like together until you create the whole big picture. So it's so cool.
Yeah,
My voice is back.
I'm glad that I'm so excited that that's his history. Like, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I need to find that video now. I want to hear him speak about that.
Yeah,
but
now
yeah,
that you
when
said
I
that,
was
I'm gonna probably look
him
for
and
it.
like and reading some of his stuff, I would just always be like, oh, where like tell me more, like what would some of the references be like for this, who else is saying this, you know, because I guess for our generation as well, we're kind of taught from a young age to critique everything quite, you know, as much as fairly as we can. Like, I remember writing essays even at school and the teachers saying, you know, make sure you are using your references properly and make sure you're using at least like 3 different sources. And I guess it just stuck with me that, yeah, like gotta share our sources. Also, I think it's really cool for the people who authored the original texts to get a mention, because like, this isn't coming out of thin air. Someone spent hours on this. Like, let's like lift each other up.
And plus you're providing a puzzle piece, because you know, I remember when I was just, and the way that I write my books are not just, they're not like, I'm not saying they're not factual, but you know, they're based on my experiences, and then I piece together all that I know interwoven with it. So it's very different, but those pieces that I've collected, I mention in my books, because I feel like, hey, here's a puzzle. It's going to take you into a whole rabbit hole of information, and you know where everybody is, so you know what to share, you know when to share it. For example, I can't wait for Christmas when the Polar Express season kind of, actually, is that coming soon? Yes,
That's soon.
that's now, yeah, soon. So you know, getting to kind of break that down and send that video again before, you know, so we can watch it and break it down like before, all of those things. And then like the last one that you did, the YouTube video on breaking this last book down, you know, some of my friends are just like, whoa, and I'm like, I know, whoa, we're the only ones that can be like, whoa, together. Because it's so deep. So yeah, I so appreciate that.
Yeah, and I remember watching it, I looked at Joanna and I was like, and again, this is a little bit of ego speaking, but I was like, is it so cool that there's not a thing that she said that I didn't understand? Now, I still have to do the work, you know, of course. But it's like, you know, watching your video, I'm like, oh my God, I understand everything she's saying, and it's amazing to me.
Yeah, because it's hard at first. It's hard at first. I've had members in the Love Your Life tribe, right? When you did the interview, they went and they bought the book, The God Design. That they've been members in the academy for about over a year now, and so we've been providing the baby steps, right? And they've had the book, and they said, you know what, I couldn't understand it, and so I put it aside. And I'm like, it's fine. And when you do get there, you're going to look at it differently. And now they are picking up the book, and they're like, I understand it. And to see that, it's like,
that's so cool.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Cool.
My friend said to me the other day, like, oh, it's like the God Design and Elevation got together and had the most awesome baby called the Cell of Life.
Yes.
That's
Like,
amazing.
everyone should start with the Cell of Life. I was like, yeah, it's kind of gone backwards.
That is so true. Did you think of that though, for real?
I did not think of
Because
that.
think about it, the God Design would be the male. Elevation with Revelation would be the female, because of Kundalini. And then the cell would be, you know, it's dielectric, it's magnetic, it's, you know, or electric. It's Trinity. Yeah,
it's really cool. I really enjoyed doing the video to go with Cell of Life as well, because I was just really excited to be in a moment where I could just share so freely and have all of the pieces that I wanted and needed to, you know, go, here it is, like, yay, happy Christmas. Because it felt really good for me. You know, my very first video on this subject on YouTube, it all came about from me just being really excited to share. So yeah, Cell of Life.
Did you get a lot of backlash when you first started?
Yeah. And I needed the excitement to share, because otherwise I don't think I would have had the balls to share, you know, like that was the first time I'd ever spoken openly about, you know, myself in this way, or like my understandings of the higher forces and God and all of those different things. Before, it was all very much just like hiding behind what character am I going to audition for, or what piece of comedy are we going to try and sell to some network? Like, it was all very like a farce, and I think when I was pregnant was when I was connecting a lot of dots, and they say obviously your hormones are so heightened in that time of feeling very connected and very touchy-feely about things, and maybe that was a part of feeling like brave enough. And I mean, there's just not one part of me that would ever go back to not just being relaxed enough to be me. That's it.
Well, there's a peace of mind of knowing your experience of this peacefulness that you can't explain. So there's a peaceness in that versus, believing in something. It's like, no, I've experienced this and I can explain it, but okay.
Yeah, and I'm curious, because our kids are 16 and 17, right? Like I know, right? Sounds weird. They understand all these things, but they don't, it's just our son much more actively seeks it and kind of walks that path, and our daughter does. And it's not pushed on them. But one of the things that we've always talked about, and I'm curious kind of your stance on this, is that, now that you understand all these things, there's almost, I feel like as a parent, for me, there's an obligation to share that, with my child. Right. And I'm curious how you feel about that. And again, whatever you're comfortable sharing. But then I also think about, generationally, it doesn't take long, right? It doesn't take long to shift the consciousness of society from an old school biblical hell, fire, and brimstone perspective to you are a perfect machine capable of, doing the same things Jesus did. So I'm curious if you're comfortable answering just like how you approach parenting with your child, and kind of just what your viewpoints are.
I mean, yeah, it's hard for sure. There are certain things that my son wants to watch, like on the iPad, for example, that I'm like, whoa, I do not agree with this. But I try to explain like why I don't think it's great for him to see it, rather than just being like, no, you're not seeing that.
Yeah.
Like I think he just kind of glazes over, because I'm like, this is a form of programming. Like your
Nice.
cells are going to take on board some of what you're seeing and hearing, and the vibration of like anger is not good for your body. So if you're watching angry people or violence too much of the time, then it's going to affect your cells and your body. And he looks at me sometimes like, shut up, and other times he looks at me like, yeah, I'm gonna take that into account. So I guess it's just a case of planting the seeds as best you can and allowing spirit to let them blossom. Like I'm still a big fan of the Bible. And, in Proverbs, it says that if you lay the foundations well, then the rest will be taken care of. So I guess it's just a case of doing what you can. But Christmas is a hard one because, they want all the chocolates, all the sweets, all the toys, all the, devices. And, actually December is one of the best months of the year to fast, because of what's happening with the sun like dipping really low and having loads of moonlight all the time. So our fluidic bodies are getting a real boost. So it's no accident, that the commercial world is trying to, fill us up with junk. And that can be really hard because, it's like, oh, I want a chocolate advent calendar, mummy. It's like, oh,
you know what's hard about that too, like for example, this is actually cool. Oh, this is airing Thursday, and Monday through Wednesday, as in it just kind of happened, sort of, not really. We're doing the hidden meanings of Christmas, and it's kind of like a redo. We did it last year. And one of the members had shown it to basically her family, and some of them are very open-minded and wanted to hear it, and it's like, okay, but then also on others were, they kind of say, oh, it's going to ruin the holidays. So there's people that, because they want to stay thinking about the holidays, it's very difficult to adapt to there's just, some of these hard truths. But then when you're open-minded, like, for example, she said, oh, how do you feel about it? And they said, oh, no, this is actually great because I see it on a deeper way, on a deeper level. So everybody's on a different scale, so there's those that kind of resist it, and then there's those that kind of want a little bit more. I just feel like, they're going to take what they can, and everybody's going to spread it a little bit different, so I kind of do it very sporadically.
Yeah, I think that people, for a lot of people, this is the best time of the year. For a lot of people, there's, and again, no disrespect. I try to skate on this or walk on this thin ice that we're walking on right now, but there's a bubble that kind of get bursts, right, when you talk about these things, I think, to sort of your mainstream. I mean, something about me that I haven't discussed. I mean, both my grandparents were preachers in the Pentecostal Holiness Church my entire life. Okay. So I understand definitely that perspective, and I understand sort of the commercial perspective that you're talking about, but it's like that bubble get burst and people don't want I'm comfortable in my bubble. I love life here in my bubble, and that's okay. But I think that could be frustrating, I think, having those conversations, because, I know for us, we have those conversations with my family quite a bit, and they're open to it, but at the same time, they just don't want to burst that bubble. They don't want to step into this path or a path to being a better person, because somehow I've convinced myself that I'm the best. I can't get any better than this, if that makes sense, right? And it's incredibly sad, but it's also, one of those things where we just drip. We constantly plant seeds and do it lovingly with no judgment, and eventually you never know what can happen and what seed can be born, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, the kind of like consistency of what you're saying to them, I guess, goes a long way. Because one of the things that used to drive me crazy about my dad was the kind of hypocrisy of things and the inconsistency of things. Like, children are so smart and their memories are so on point of like, well, that's not what you said last week.
Yeah.
So it's, trying to maintain that kind of like consistency, I guess. And I wouldn't dream of trying to like make a 6-year-old fast over Christmas and say, no turkey or no pigs in blankets or whatever, because, my husband loves all those things. It's like he can just see me do what I'm doing and ask me like if he wants to. And maybe one day in years to come, he'll go, oh, that's why she was doing that, like, or not, because it's his path. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think that too leads to kind of what you were saying. It's like when we try to take these steps, especially not with just our close family, like, who you live with, husband, wife, children, a little bit safer space. But, with your outside, like my parents, cousins, whatever, and they see that, because we're vegan, right? Like we don't, and it's very difficult because people just look at you differently. I mean, we are in the South of the United States, which, it's, they eat a lot of meat, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And it's expected that you do the same thing. And both of our cultures are such that, you eat and you eat, right? You eat. That's what we do. You eat, you get more plate, go back. You're gonna get skinny, you just pile on some weight, go get another plate. And it's just it's so amazing to me.
Contradicting.
Right. Yeah, it's so contradicting, and it's it's so frustrating. Like that's one of the things that I struggle with, is it just frustrates me because it's like you're judging me, yet I'm not judging you, but I understand things that you don't, and you're not willing to even hear my side, but yet I'm the one receiving all your judgment. And it's so frustrating.
Mm.
Like I struggle with that mightily personally.
Mm.
But
I hear you. I hear
yeah.
you. There's yeah, a couple of in-laws that I have that I'm just like, whoa, why are you like attacking me? I have said nothing. But you know, what can you do? It's really funny actually. I have a confession that I pretended to drink gin and tonic with them for a good like a year or so, because I just didn't have the courage to say I'm not drinking, because I knew that the peer pressure and the amount of explaining that I would have to do,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And
wouldn't have been able to hack it. Only recently have I been able to be very like open with them and say, no, I'm not.
Setting your boundaries. Yeah.
right. And I think as you walk that path, and this was my point, is that like, as you walk that path, the judgment happens, right? That they, because we've experienced that just recently as well, is that where, you know, you think you're better than me? No, I just want
No.
to be better myself. That's it. Like this isn't
Yeah.
judgment, but I think that's like something that, you know, that we struggle with, is just that it's just hard, you know, to be attacked and knowing that you mean you're acting in love, and it's being received as an attack.
So basically like maintain the walk. Like,
Yeah, we're expected to maintain the walk at all times, and if you slip up, somebody's going to notice it. See, you're not so perfect, right?
Mm.
that's hard.
It is. Agreed.
But it's so amazing at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just the other day somebody asked me like, so once you have this awakening, is that it? After everything's a bed of roses? I was like, no, not at all. Like, yeah, you're going to be more equipped, and it's going to be a journey, and you know, you're going to feel amazing and enlightened, but that's going to be an unfolding. And there's a reason why the Kundalini comes with a warning, because it rocks your world. And you notice things about situations that you wouldn't have noticed before, and all sorts of things that, you know, you have to kind of relearn to navigate through from, you know, a new perspective of having so much of your subconscious like available to you. You pick up on things like little nuances or little glances between people. And I think that's why they say there's a fine line between awakening and schizophrenia, or whatever that thing is.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're very sensitive and very able to read situations like with crazy clarity, and you maybe notice people that you thought you trusted and loved, like maybe not being completely cool with you, or being passive aggressive, or just showing some kind of like I'm trying to think of a good word, like almost bad intentions against you. It's like, wow, I did not see that. And it can be quite hard to accept, I think, that, you know, you
Another test.
yeah, like, oh
No, for
my gosh,
sure.
was I really this naive? But again, like, I wouldn't go back. So
Yeah,
supposed
100%
you
agree.
asked to see these things, you asked to, you know, have clarity. And like, I mean, the way that I pray has kind of changed a little bit in the way that I address my prayers, but I still pray for like exposure on like a mass scale. And I think a lot of what's been happening over there lately, like we've been hearing a lot about the Balenciaga stuff and all of this, you know, there needs to be more of that, like more darkness coming to light continuously. And I think that will be a big keep being a big catalyst for like a lot of positive change for all of us.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Darkness before the light, right?
Yeah, for sure. You're getting the cost back again. You're getting your cost back again.
Man, it's like an attack. It's like, really now?
You were gonna that water, what is that water?
Well, the bottle,
That's really cool.
it says I am, and then it has love, light, truth.
Yeah, so
Amazing.
you charge it in the moonlight. You can charge it in the sunlight too.
Yes.
But you charge it in the moonlight and then drink it.
And so basically
during
it
a full
picks
moon.
up the frequencies of the imprint that it gets from the light, and then it charges the water.
Nice.
And you can set your intentions. So, but it's made for the like medical water, basically like living water, that you carry in this type of jar so that it's okay, so that it stays
Yeah.
living. We're
I
just not
have
at the living water
some
part.
of my glasses and stuff are labeled with high vibe words, but I've never seen
Yes.
them. Like, I like that bottle.
Yes, the blue bottle.
Yeah, that's what I guess higher consciousness couples get each other. Because I actually got it was it for your birthday?
I don't remember.
Yeah, anyway, it was a gift. It was a gift from me because there's a his and her one. I have one as well.
Nice.
And, yeah, so it's like I guess that's what higher consciousness metaphysical couples get each other. Bottles to charge water in.
Bottles for water. Oh, so funny.
I feel like you were going to say something about water before you started choking before.
Me?
Yeah. Did you have a water thought?
Maybe not.
No.
No. I had a coughing moment, but I don't think I had a water. Let me ask you, because you're always putting something out, you're always breaking it down. And of course, we're all very ambitious, and we're always doing something, always learning, always doing, always learning. Do you feel like you've been able to find that balance, that sweet spot between the worldly life and the spiritual life, between the practicing it, between being a mom, between being, a businesswoman, all of these things? How do you handle
there's
that?
definitely been moments when it's become too much of one of those aspects. But I am aware of the fact that there should be a balance, and that also I feel 100% better across the board when that balance is right. Like, one of the ways that I'll notice when the balance is off is when I'm like doing something with my son, for example, and I know that I'm not present. So he'll, I don't know, say we're just building Lego, and he's chatting and happy and this and that and blah blah blah, and I'll be thinking about, almost, this is too strong, I'm just kind of exaggerating to make a point, but I'll almost be like, oh, when's this going to be over so I can get back to what I need to do? And then I'll realize, like, no, these moments are so precious. This time is, time is the precious commodity, really, and love. So forget what you need to do. And I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier about being frustrated when I couldn't get things finished in the time that I thought they needed to be finished in. And actually surrendering to the fact that they'll be done when they're done. I feel like I was quiet for a really long time, particularly on YouTube, which was where my kind of biggest following is, because I didn't really feel like there was anything I particularly was urgent to share, or that I had anything kind of new to depart that was like, it didn't feel organic. And I know like people make a living out of telling you like, this is how many times a day you need to be posting, and this is the recipe to send this through the roof and that, and blah blah blah. Because I have other friends that are influencers in different areas, you know, beauty and what have you. And one of my friends is a very popular yoga teacher on YouTube, and but she doesn't subscribe to that either, and she's done incredibly. So I think maybe if you're peddling something very mainstream, then yeah, those formulas can work. But for me, it's like, if I'm in cocoon mode, then I'm not gonna share anything unless it feels really relevant at that time. But obviously when you've just released a book and you're excited to share it with the world, then like, yeah, I will post more. But I know that there'll be another time in the future when I won't feel like I've got much to say, or like I don't really want to just say something just for the sake of saying it. So it is a balance for sure. And I think it's hard when you work on your own, because I found myself having to learn different things that maybe I didn't particularly want to have to learn, like, you know, in the business aspect of doing my tax returns, or my or how do I figure out KDP and how to publish this thing, like,
Right.
wait, I have to get format now, and
I know.
like, I mean, those are the things I don't particularly enjoy, but
you're guided step by step.
yeah, you just get it done.
Yeah, do you find that the way that the information unfolded to kind of attain or ascertain this knowledge kind of happens in that world too, from the business side of things, that things just sort of fall into place as they need to when time
Yeah,
and limits come up, right?
You have to surrender.
for sure. Like, I released a course recently that kind of coincides with the Cell of Life and the whole theme of Kundalini and the anointing of Christ. And I had been told for years that I would be a teacher, and you know, I kind of thought I was doing that in a way with the videos and the books. But then one of my Patreons, Cindy, I love you, lovely lady, Cindy Jewell, she's had major health struggles recently as well, so we've been praying a lot. She was saying, you know, like, she's on the other side of the world, we've never met in person, but we talk a lot, and she said, I just need you to break it down, like what I should be doing when the moon is in my sun sign. So I've just got something really simple to follow, and I think that people would really benefit from that. And I struggled with that, or maybe my ego struggled with that, or spirituality versus ego struggled with that, because I felt like I don't really want to offer this, like, here's a formula, because that's what everyone's doing. So I kind of had to take it away and was like, okay, like, I had thought about doing like live retreats and maybe doing one a month, like a different one for a different star sign, like each month, like come away, like, let's, you know, hang out together and do yoga and, you know, do the practice and have, like, you know, an awesome vegan food there available, and just make it as easy as possible for people to walk the walk, like to take all the temptations away for a minute and say, like, here's a really conducive atmosphere to helping you realize this, like, incredible experience for yourself. And it happens by degree, you know, like people have tingles and things and they don't even really realizing that they're just having a very mild, like, Kundalini experience or mystical experience. Like someone can tell you a lie and you'll have a shudder, and that's like part of Kundalini awakening. So it can be really subtle, but it can also be really intense. So I just kept like mulling over how would I do this? How would I do this? And also, like in the UK, I have a certain amount of, you know, people around who read my books and everything else. But I feel like if I really wanted to do live retreats, it would be much better to do it in America somewhere, because there's just more people who are open-minded to what I'm saying. And that's not possible right now because I'm unjabbed. So I'm not allowed into the States. So I thought, okay, maybe I could package it as a course. But what I do all throughout I mean, it's mostly videos with some downloadable files and things. And, you know, other like relative kind of resources, is just keep bringing it back to the fact that, you know, like you said, everyone brings themselves along this journey in a different way. Nobody's path is identical. Like something that brings a lot of context for me might not mean a thing to somebody else. So, you know, I called the course Super Consciousness Awakening because it's like a building in terms of your own personal position of how open you feel and how connected you feel to the divine in and through you. So it's not like, oh, do this, this, and this, and it'll be done, you know, because when I did my Kundalini teacher training, my guru kept making that point as well, that like it's just not going to look the same for everyone. It's just not going to be the same for everyone. But there are guidelines and they will affect everyone who seeks with a pure heart to seek, not to achieve some accolade or not to, you know, puff their feathers up, but because they genuinely want to feel connected and feel that love and have healing and have, you know, comfort. Because so many of us are broken from different things that have happened in our childhood or in relationships, or just feeling like we've been betrayed in some way, maybe by the media, maybe by loved ones. It's all different. Like everyone's traumas. My Kundalini teacher told me that the definition of trauma is anything that we're not ready for, anything that shocks us, basically. So the scope of trauma could be so minor, but also so intense. So we all have trauma. And I think the greatest thing about the anointing or the Kundalini for me is the healing that I've experienced of letting go of a lot of things that were really deeply affecting me and holding me back, just from, like, you know, insecurities and grief and all of those things. So
do you feel like that was a process that happened slowly as you received downloads and dreams and things like that, or was it something that it was very intense, very instant, very I mean, I know it was very life-changing when it happened, but as far as like the process of
When I had that initial experience, I certainly felt loved up beyond belief. I mean, like, I felt like my heart was bursting, you know, like just so excited, so clear, so in love with everything and everyone, and really grasping that, like, you know, we are all one concept was just like so enriching. But again, you know, like when the dust settles and you're dealing with life, real life, in, you know, on a day-to-day basis, and all the little things that that entails, like, of course, it was a gradual unfolding, as well as like a very like profound, beautiful experience. And it's funny because there are things, there are tools that I use even now. Like, I was having some anxiety last week about something that actually isn't very, you know, particularly important, but it was still bothering me. And just by doing like a heart focused meditation and releasing, like, I know that within a period of time you can really just bring back that balance and tap back into the force, and or remember that all is well. But we get pulled in so many different directions, like it's easy to get in a spin.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the bubble too. As part of the bubble
Distractions.
is that you're almost addicted to this emotional loop, right? This emotional sort of highs and lows that we get by living, you know, in the 3D sort of commercialized world.
Of getting distracted and not
Yeah.
really getting to the point of seeking.
Right. But still knowing that you
But
need
being
to do these things. Yeah.
being pulled in that direction.
Constantly,
Yes.
all the time. Yeah. But not either having the desire or the patience or just the word escapes me that I'm looking for, but you know, the drive to just stay on path, because this journey is hard. I mean, this journey,
Discipline.
yeah, discipline. Not having the discipline to just keep it moving. And I think, you know, like again, just listening to your story, it's like I feel like my interpretation and the takeaways for me is it's like you had this unbelievable experience that just created a thirst in you that you want to share with the world, and anyone who understands it and resonates with it will be all the better for it, because again, seeking you shall find, right?
Thirsty.
Yeah.
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 It's so cool because there's some of the questions that I've wanted to ask you and I'm thinking it in my head, and you immediately, like within 5 to 10 seconds, you answer it.
Yeah.
It's so,
I know you're like, does she know?
Yeah,
Does she
it-
know what we're
it's
asking
fine.
her?
That's funny.
but it's so cool too, because again, for me, you know, as you being definitely someone that, you know, I look up to, it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, the resonance and the connection, as strong or as big as it may be, that's a sign to me of being
On the right path.
on the right path, right? Which is beautiful in and of itself, at least for me.
I mean, there's so many, like, I honestly felt when I kind of first realized I was on this path that there was no one that I could go to, or at least if there were, I didn't know them. And I reached out to John St. Julian and was started donating on his Patreon, and you know, he was very welcoming and said, you know, don't worry, like, maybe look at this. And he was really like a mentor to me, and I'll always be grateful for that. And what I've come to realize now is there's so many of us, and it's so cool. Like, there's just so many open-hearted, no bullshit people who are just willing to have like deep, really awesome conversations and not hold anything back.
Yeah, agreed.
Real talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
real talk.
Had to throw that in there.
Yeah, it's like And it's like too, it's like that's to me in my journey, it's like that's the pillar. The pillar is that there's no cheating this path. You know, you only get what you put into it. You're only, you know, you're going to have struggles, but it's the beauty of the path is that, right? Is the discipline, is the focus that's required, is the rejection of all that is and the acceptance of you know who you really are, right? And it's like it's just so it's so cool and it's been such a cool journey. I mean, I can't wait, you know, to see what happens 5 years from now,
Look,
30 years from
okay,
now,
hold on.
right?
Yeah, but I have to share one thing before this ends, before I lose my throat. I swear, where do we begin? Okay, all your books are white, okay? And I know I've said this many times, but I just want to share now that I have the whitest one, just so you can see the difference of how much I often refer back to your books. But they go from this like, I'm gonna show you. You
To
see
the
that?
newest, whitest one. Yeah, that's so funny.
I'm trying very hard not to get makeup on it, because I could see the difference, but I find it very comical that I, I don't know. To me, it's like
The color of the book is determined by its use.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, and so it's
Nice.
like, oh, these are my go-to, and so they're quickly turning cream. Very
I
cool.
love
How
that.
to share.
That's so funny. It's really funny as well, like the picture on the front of going back to like kids, the picture on the front of Elevation. There was like one day when a few of like Zach's friends had come back to the house and Zach was like, oh, this is Mummy's seashell book, because he thinks that the God design cover has something to do with seashells. And then his friend Elijah was like, oh, and what's this cover? And Zach was like, oh, that's the Ascension vehicle, the dodecahedron. And then like the next day at school, one of the mums was like, so the dodecahedron, like you guys talking about this from your house yesterday? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, well, the dodecahedron is the Ascension vehicle. I mean, this is like a mum that I just usually talk to about when sports day. I was like, oh my gosh, we're getting into it in the playground. Here we go.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
So it's an interesting life, but I think there's a tendency to feel like, oh my gosh, am I going to be judged? Because my Christian friends were so like quick to close the door and judge me, and that was that. I think I still when I meet new people and they ask me about things and I don't know like what their perspective is on things, I may hold back a little because I'm like, oh gosh, please don't judge me and just chuck me aside.
Yeah.
Because it's fine when it's just me, but when I'm thinking like, oh, you're gonna judge my kid like based on like what I say, it's like, oh gosh, this is real.
Yeah.
100%.
So true. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your truth and your confessions and your just your spiritual awakening story, because it's very it's relatable, and at the same time it's also a hashtag goals for many people, right? To I mean, you kind of lay out the process, and we'll put all the links as far as your programs, as far as your um all the stuff that you have going on, but they are each kind of this rabbit hole of your own kind of awakening journey. And so to be on here to share your story, it kind of just creates a whole nother opening. So thank you so much for coming on here. Do you have any last words?
Nah, yeah, same. I say the same thing. Thank you. I mean, this whole season has been cool, just hearing so many different people's process and how different they are, yet how the same they are. It's just a matter of depth, right? Like each person's experience is a little bit deeper or a little bit shallower than the other, but ultimately it's an experience leading towards the same ultimate experience. It's just a matter of time and effort and focus and discipline and, you know, kind of all the things we talked about. But yeah, I mean, you've been instrumental in our journey, just in our understanding and in our sort of feeding the process. And yeah, thank you. And it's been awesome to meet you. I'm a little bit of a fanboy of you. So I mean, being able to talk to you and being able to just interact and just speak to you directly has been amazing. And thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.